Well, we're going to give it a couple of minutes, Ronnie. Good afternoon to you. Good evening. What time of the evening is it? 9 o'clock. How
Good
you doing?
evening, Yasheka. Good evening. And good evening to all that are tuning in, and for those that are soon to be tuning in. And I guess based on the time zone, it's still afternoon for some of you all, or early evening. But just want to say hello and welcome to Ronnie and Yasheka's dating discussions. How was your day, Yasheka, first of all, last week?
Everything was well. Everything was well. And I'm going to go ahead and before we get into the pleasantries, introduce ourselves. So for those who may be joining us for the first time, I am Yasheka Foster, or Coach Yasheka, as I like to be sometimes called to or referred to. And I am a dating 101 coach, or like I like to call myself, the artist of dating. And so, as a dating 101 coach or the artist of dating, it is my job to help people understand who they are in this dating world so they can know exactly what they want, what they desire, and go out there and ask for without feeling like they have to deprive themselves of the things that they need in life or what they want from their partner to be complete in life. And so, and with me today is Ronnie, my partner in this, and this is the Ronnie and Yasheka's dating discussion. And we are coming live to you guys on YouTube. Ronnie, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ronnie Walker, Master Coach of Exceptional Relationships, Dating, and Sex. Pretty much in a nutshell, I approach dating for going on 30 years now from a very self-development standpoint. And in short, until you know who you are, then you really can be effective and have exceptional dating experiences, relationship experiences, and of course, exceptional sex. So that is it in a nutshell. Just giving you the short version. You can refer to me as Ronnie, Mr. Ronnie. Uh, Many call me Mr. Relationship Man, which is how I've now, you'll notice that on some of my platforms, I use that because that is how some choose to address me. But whatever it is that you choose to address me as, of course, based on the state you are in at that time, because the names can be quite varied. And that's it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Ronnie, today this discussion is going to be a little bit different than usual. We're going to dive right into talking about the word that most adults love to hear. Some shy away from, but they secretly love to talk about it anyways, or it's something that we talk about amongst our friends, right? Today we are talking about sex. Yes, sex. SEX, right? And that one, we're coming from the perspective of when is sex not enough when it comes to dating or in a relationship?
Okay. That well, okay. We're gonna listen. There's a number of different ways we can go about this, but I really, you know, she could brainstorm this subject, and I felt for very good reasons because, and I'm sure she will share with you, but I know from my space that this is something that, as a sex coach, I get a number of calls from women in particular concerning the importance of sex, and for those having discussions where sex is not that important to them. And I'm of the space that I believe sex is very important for a number of reasons in a relationship. And again, I'm not going to go into whether the sex we're talking about is between married people or unmarried people. We're just going to keep it at just sex. In terms of why is it important? So we're going to cover that because if we don't talk about that, then I truly believe it's a very important component of the relationship. But again, not everybody views it or addresses it in a way that is sometimes healthy. But in this particular subject, we're going to cover what happens when it's not enough because we never want to make sex, and I'm sure Yashika will co sign on this. We never want to imply that it is, the end all be all and it is the number one problem solver in a relationship. So, this is something that I think is going to be a great subject to start because I can assure you, Yashika and I have a lot of wonderful conversations and subjects that we're going to bring about when we talk about sex. So we're just giving you a primer here. But before we get to the other parts of this, let's just create the foundation of making sure that we address those that feel What happens when sex is not enough? Yasheka?
Oh, this conversation is, listen. So I think as I always say, as a 48-year-old woman and the experiences that I've been through and been with in life, I always wonder about that part of it, right? When to know, because there have been famous people that have wrote books and said that you should wait X amount of days before you engage. Or then there's, depending on your background, you may feel as though you should be at the altar first, just depending, right? So everyone approaches it very differently. But as an individual, and the way that I view life, and my path in life and the way I walk in this world, for me, it's always been a question as to exactly when is the time, the right time. Am I going to wait until I walk down the aisle, right? And the caveat to that is, well, if I do, but what happens if, right? And you can, anybody listening can finish that sentence, because there's always that part in the back of your head, especially if you're going into it and you have some idea about what it should feel like or be like or whatever, whether it's been from your own experiences or things that you've talked about beforehand, or you watched a few movies, wherever you got your education from. What happens if you wait until the altar and then you be like, okay, well, this isn't what I wanted, or something like that, right? So if that is the person that you are, kind of like myself, Ronnie, you know how I am, where that is something that I need to know up front, right? And I'm not gonna even try to dance around it. It's something I have to know up front. But it depends on the person, right? Because some people feel that they should wait to a particular time. But then there's people like myself who feels that, well, I'm not going to wait until I get married, because if I wait until I marry that person, what happens if this is not what I wanted? Because I have been married before, right? I definitely have been married before. So I've been in a long-term relationship. And so I do have at least one source to compare it to. So in this world of dating, if I go back out here now and I'm trying to get to know someone and we're going through that dating phase, the question will come up, or has came up, about how long should I wait? Do I want to? Because granted, I'm a woman, like I said, of 48 years of age. So I've lived a couple of lives, in this world a little bit, a couple of, not many, but a couple. And I've been married before. So for me, I feel that I'm not so deeply rooted in my beliefs that I need to wait until the altar. So I want to know beforehand. And at the least, I have my previous marriage to compare it to, if nothing else, right? And so that is something that I think that most people come up with, because especially women, because we don't want to be portrayed as being, what the old folks used to say, fast tail, or we don't want to move too slow, because there are some people in the world that don't move as slow. So you want to make yourself compatible with the ones that's, moving fast, and then the ones that's kind of moving slow. Like, you want to be right there in the middle. And so for most women, it's always like, what is that middle part? Okay. And so once we get that established, right, if you're going to figure that out, or wait, but then it comes a time in your life to say, okay, well, if I start doing this first, before all that stuff comes out, what happens if it just becomes about sex and nothing else? So we go through this. We go through this in our mental, in a relationship, because it's like, well, it's almost like, damn if I do, damn if I don't. Okay, if I wait too long, then this may happen. If I don't, if I do it too fast, then this may happen. So it's like, damn if you do, damn if you don't. Okay, and so, but then you wonder, have I created the bond that I need to create with this person that's going to take us past just the sex? Are we on that path of getting to know each other, and we went to the next level? And so the only next level to this level is that part of it, right? So you wonder, but then you want to make sure the connection is not gone, or there's been a solid connection that's been established, because people can, get into relationships and put that forefront, and then it clouds everything else. And so, yeah. So what do you have about that, Ronnie? And I've said a lot. So,
Well, you said something that was very important, and this was about creating a bond. And so, again, regardless of the decision that one makes whether they're going to wait until they're married or quote unquote test the waters, that's up to them. But one thing is going to be very pivotal, and that is the bond. I remember hearing that sex is a place you go, not something you do. And so when we talk about, well, what happens when sex is not enough? Well, we also want to cover in creating this bond, making sure that we're having not just honest communication, but we want to make sure the communication is effective. So
Mhm.
let's just take it for the person who is saying, all right, well, let's just say, well, the sex is phenomenal. Okay, let's just say for the sake of this discussion, the sex between you both are phenomenal. Okay, we do know that, well, what is it that we're looking to have outside of wonderful sex? Well, we want to make sure that we're healthy
Mhm.
because that's important in sex from a mental perspective, also from a physical perspective. We also want to make sure that we are creating consistent and what was I going to say consistent and important. Well, not that word important. Well, it is important, but we want to make sure that we're creating consistent intimacy. And see what tends to happen is many choose to make intimacy and sex the same thing, and it really isn't. Gentlemen, I'm sure for any of you, if you've lived long enough or have really taken the time to listen to enough women, they will tell you that you make love to their mind first before you go into the act itself. And I can tell you, I've heard this over and over and over. I don't care if she's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. They really talk about the mind, getting that set up. Now, that can start as early as a good morning kiss. That could be a slap on the ass while she's brushing her teeth. That can happen from a text conversation while you're at work and letting her know you're thinking about her. It could be the words of affirmation
Mhm.
that you're sharing with her in terms of if that's her love language, or even if it's not a love language. Again, just affirming what she means to you, gentlemen. And I can't tell you how important that is. That by the time you've gotten to the act itself, it's that much more enjoyable. Because it's one thing to have, just sex in of itself and you're just lusting. It hasn't been a while, and so you're just catching up because she's been out of town or he's been out of town or whatever the reason is. But again, we're talking about it when it's not enough as well. So what do we do? And this is a question that you're both going to have with each other during the dating phase. If you feel that this is a space that you want to enter before you get married, as well as if you're still waiting until you walk down the aisle, you're having this conversation as well. That you communicate what great sex looks like, feels like, sounds like to you. So maybe that includes some fetishes, whatever that may be. But your partner needs to know that. And in the absence, so let's just say now, what would happen when sex is not enough? Well, it could be an injury, it could be stress at work. What are you doing to make this person feel wanted, appreciated, affirmed in their role in the relationship? So it's great to say, look, I'm going to give him some, I'm going to give her some. And, once she gets a taste of this, everything will be all right. Because I can't tell you how many men feels that the solution to every argument is to roll around in the bed.
Well, there's some women that feel that way too. Let's just be honest.
Well, okay.
I'm one
Well,
of 'em.
I,
All is forgiven at that time. All is forgiven. All is
but,
forgiven.
but again, and it's so funny because, you have these discussions where, you know, you're in the heat of an argument and then you settle down for a minute and then you have an incredible night of what you think the man is thinking is makeup sex,
Yeah.
and then you wake up in the morning and then she's fixing breakfast for everyone else but you.
Oh yeah, we
and you,
feel
and you
mad about
wonder
it.
and you wonder what happened. And it's like, wait a minute, we had this incredible night, but I'm still my plate. I don't have a plate. And she's like, no, no, no. I was just horny. Doesn't mean the argument is over. The sex didn't.
Exactly. Because
The sex
one
didn't
don't have
end the
anything to do
argument.
with the other. That's right. One don't have anything to do with the other.
Exactly. And so, listen, fellas, I know you can relate to what I'm talking about. So, this is the space again when we talk about when it's not enough. And this is one of those pivotal times when, yes, she's compartmentalized it. She's like, okay, great. I'm horny, you know, I- and I still love this man. I'm going to get mine, but make no mistake about it. This argument and this debate is far from over. So again, what do we do? Well, again, we're back to the truth, upfront, effective communication so that we can get back to the sex and then get breakfast or dinner served for you that night, that morning. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
again, these are spaces that we want to make sure that when sex is not enough, we have our communication in place so that we can address it in a very emotionally mature way so that we can get back to the lovemaking. It's just something you wanted to add, Yashika.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that that's the key too. And I think that and I think that's why it's so important that before we even get to where we taking this relationship, right? All that foundational work has to be done. And it just goes back to the whole circle of you and I creating this platform for people, be YouTube, Facebook, wherever, because it is so necessary. You know what I mean? Because it has been where we look at it and say, okay, all this takes work. You know what I mean? In other words, when you want to be in a space with a partner and you taking sex off the table for whatever reason, right? Because you're saying, okay, what do we have past the physical, right? This is when all that foundational work is necessary. It needs to come through. It needs to be shown. It needs to, because that's what's going to keep you together, you know? So it's important. So when we get to that, you know, we're going to go straight from, you know, what is the batting plate to the make the home run, run around all the bases, make the home run. All that
Mhm.
is good. You know, if you can understand that this doesn't fix this or this doesn't catapult the relationship here. You understand what I'm saying? Because we can have great sex together. That's all the basis, right? But if we're not compatible or we haven't created this foundation at the bottom, then all that when you really get to the nuts and bolts of a relationship, all that is totally irrelevant if we can have great sex. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's totally relevant. You know what I mean? Like great sex is totally irrelevant if we don't have all that created. You know what I mean? So,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that's why it's important. So when we get people out here and we're dating and we're trying to understand, you know, is this person the right person for me? And then we get to these different positions. It could be anything. It doesn't always have to be just the physical attraction. It could be, you know, that person did something nice for you, or you know, that person stuck by, this happened, or you know, just things that I hear people say why they started with this person. Well, you know, I was with this person because right when I met him, or right when I met her, you know, 6 months later, I found out that I was going to be going through this, and they stuck by me. Okay, that was one incident, right? Because maybe they are a caring person. Maybe they like to see people that they care about not suffer in that way, right? But that doesn't mean that they're taking care of everything else or that they'll be there through everything else, right?
Hmm.
So that's why it's important to have all that foundational stuff together. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And this is why, and here's something, even before I go into what I was going to say, many things that Yashika and I will cover. I'm sure some of you listening in will say, well, Ron, this should be pretty elementary. This should be pretty common. But yet you'd be surprised as to how many people don't cover the basics because everything is left up to assumption. They just assume that this person at this particular age and married one, two, three, four, five times or whatever should know this by now. But yet you'd be surprised of how many people, if you didn't do the work on yourself and reflect, you can end up repeating very bad communication patterns. And
Mhm.
so I can also tell you how many times I've had people who have been in relationships where the sex was phenomenal, but that is all they have. And they know upon further inspection, through the conversations, the communication that's ongoing, they really have to come to terms where that this person really isn't the person for me because of the direction that they're going in and the vision that they have for themselves and what they see a relationship going. And yet, because of the sex, it's clouded the judgment, it's created procrastination, it's put men and women in spaces they really don't want to be in, which is yet another reason why people feel that you should not have sex before marriage. But again, that's your decision, and that's for you to work out within you and who you choose to believe in. But again, make sure that you know who you are, what your vision for a relationship is before getting into this space, because there's going to be times when you may not feel like it, she may not feel like it. And it's like, okay, so what else do we have?
Mhm.
Where is the intimacy? You know, can we cuddle? For whatever it is, are we having a bad day? Is there stress? Is there illness?
Mhm.
Is there something that's going on in the relationship itself that really could replace the sex so that you both feel as though you're heading in the same you're both congruent in where you see the relationship going, and that you both feel affirmed in your space within each other's lives.
Yeah. And you know what, Ronnie? And let's talk about the opposite of that. And the opposite of that is simply this. Again, the subject is when sex is not enough, right? Because remember, that question was kind of posed from a woman's perspective, more or less, right? Or, from a couple's perspective, not necessarily from a man's perspective, but more from, a woman's perspective or a couple, other words, us together. So the opposite of that is when sex is not enough for the man. And what I mean by that is this. Sometimes women, we think that once we get to that part in the relationship and it becomes a constant or something that happens often, that now you my man, I'm your woman, right? Whereas that now the guy is thinking on the opposite side of when sex is enough. In other words, sex is not enough for us to necessarily be a couple. So that's the opposite side of that. So let's dive into that portion of it, because I believe that sometimes, again, this is that foundational work that needs to be done in the beginning of the relationship, right? To get to understand, like, what does it mean for me to be your woman? What does it mean for you to be my man? Like, does it mean I write on a note, hey, will you be my boyfriend? Yes or no, and you circle it? Or is it a conversation where we sit down and you say, hey, Yasheka, I want you to be my woman, or whatever lingo is used in today or with the millennials or whoever when they make somebody their partner, right? So sometimes, like I said, from the opposite perspective of that is a person will assume because we've had sex that we're a couple, whereas the other person is saying, but sex is not enough for us to be a couple. So I think that's something that we need to discover or talk about up under this as well.
Ooh, yes, again, another space where this is where people have assumptions. Ladies and gentlemen, listen to me. If you pick up anything from what Yashika and I are sharing, understand this. If you really want to have an exceptional dating experience, relationship experience, sexual experience, then you need to master the art of asking questions and master, and maybe master may not be the best word, but accept that you're going to have to be honest and answering questions.
Mhm.
This leaving things up to chance, a prayer, or assumptions can lead you down the road of no sex,
Mhm.
no intimacy, no affirmations, no visions for the relationship.
Mhm.
I know many people resist the fact that they feel that, okay, Ronnie, this seems more like an interview. Well, if you choose to look at it that way, great. I'm not more so concerned about how you choose to view this. However, it's important for you to get the communication that you need from this person and make sure you are communicating effectively to get the results that you're looking for. Because again, far too often, I'm speaking to far too many couples over the years. And I wish I can tell you there was a magic wand that I could wave to get people on this page, but they're not. But you'll find couples that 6, 7, 10 years
Mhm.
and only finding out about a person's desire for this or desire for that, that they really didn't like holding hands in public, or they or intimacy they feel is not their strong point, or maybe they're insecure in certain spaces when it comes to intimacy because you prefer or you like to share your intimacy in a particular way. And
Mhm.
again, if it's 100 questions, it's 100 questions.
That's right.
I just need you, again, part of what I do is saving men and women time in, the lack of a better word, the vetting process of getting to know someone and making a very clear and concise decision of deciding whether this person is going to be a part of your long term life. Because this is what we're talking about. Then you add children into the mix and you have a whole nother dynamic.
Mhm.
So I want you to be sure and I want you to be honest with yourself and making sure that you really accept, not just understand, but just accept that asking these questions is what's going to get you there. So if you're wondering, yeah, we've been having sex for, 2 months now, so it must be
Right.
mean it just absolutely must mean that we are a couple.
Mhm.
And the man, and I don't want to pick on the men, will wake up and like, no, we didn't establish that. When did we talk about? When did we say this?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
when did we do this? When did we say this? When did you say that? Did I say that because we did this again? So listen, and I'm sure if not people tuning in, those of you tuning in may know someone who've been in the same situation. So instead of living things up to assumptions, and I'm going to be a broken CD, broken record, what I just going to repeat this over and over and over. Learn to ask the questions. Don't assume, ask,
Yeah. Because
and
that's
then explain what you're looking for, so
yeah.
that you can make sure you're both congruent.
And it would save people so much time. I've heard it where in conversations where I've heard someone says, um, well, and again, this not to pick on guys, but because I talk to more women than anything else. But I'll hear where they'll say, well, everything was going good, and then my boyfriend told me that he told me he didn't really want to be in a relationship, and it's just too much too fast, and da 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 da. And my question is always this: when was it established that you guys were boyfriend and girlfriend, like for lack of a better word, man and woman, my guy, your girl, whatever. Like when was it established? You know what I mean? And I mean, it doesn't always have to be, I mean, in a perfect world, yes. In the way that we think, yes, the man wants to, the woman wants the man to ask, can I, will you be my woman or whatever? But women, sometimes it's okay that you say, hey, I need to know, like, are you my guy? You don't have to ask him to be a guy if that's something you don't want to do, but you can sure ask the question, are you my guy? Are you my one? Are you and I monogamous right now? Are we exclusive? Whatever, right? But let him say yes or no, even after you ask. And that way you don't have to assume anything, because then it becomes a little bit more real. It becomes a little bit more okay. Now that we are together, right? Now we can see where we go from here, as opposed to we're just passing time away, having sex, going out occasionally, doing whatever, right? Because that's okay too if that's what you both want, or if that's something that you're okay with and he's okay with, whatever, right? Even if it hadn't been established, if it's something that you both realize that you want, then hey, that's cool too. But if you're looking for that next level, that next level, that next level, whatever it may look to you, it has to be established so that way you have a starting point. People celebrate, when they became engaged or when they became boyfriend and girlfriend or things like that, right? So you want to think about those things. I think we did it when we were kids. I don't know. Do people still do that, Ronnie? be like, well, we would made it official 6 months ago. We're boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yes, yes. It goes from talking to being girlfriend, boyfriend to those people saying, I don't believe in girlfriend and boyfriend.
Yeah, I
Again,
mean,
whatever you choose to define it as or
like,
not define
at
it as.
this age, is there a date or is it just, I mean, like, how does it go, But anyway, and so I say that to say that if that's the case, because, in the back of our minds, we want a starting point, right? When did we actually become official? Then you'll know what the next level look like. So does that mean that, okay, we're going to date a year and then see if we're going to go to the engagement level and then maybe be engaged for a year and then see, then set the wedding date? Like, how does that look like to you? You know what I mean? Or if you're okay with being at that level forever, like we're just partners, we're life partners forever, without any type of agreement that you sign a contract to. So if that's what you want to do, that's cool too, but it needs to be established because yeah,
I
yeah,
agree. I agree. You know, so when we talk about the sex, because again, let's face it, we're now in a space and time, whether people choose to agree or not, there are people who just don't want to get married.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
this is a whole nother conversation that Yashika and I would be covering in the future. You know, and the part that sex plays into this, because again, you're not married but you've been together 2 years. There's going to be no engagement. Do you call it a civil union? Do you call it
Right,
forever partners?
right,
Who the
right.
hell knows what you're choosing to find it, but that is your right. And Yashika and I here to we're not here to judge you on whatever you choose to design for your relationship life. But again, let's just assume the sex is incredible.
Yeah,
But what happens when it's not enough? What happens again? In other words, the process is going to be no different. So it's not that we're truly trying to focus on the sex. What we are saying is that there are other components outside of the act itself that is very, very important that needs to be addressed because life throws its pivots.
yeah,
And whatever that pivot may be, you're going to have to know in advance, or as they say, the relationship will be tested, you know. So before you get to a space where, especially if there is no sex, to prevent some form of resentment for whatever the reason may be for not no longer having any sex at that particular time or for any length of time, what are you doing to supplement those feelings of intimacy and closeness and caring
yeah,
and desire? These are the things that are still very important to the woman as well as the man. But I'm speaking to the men. I mean, these are things that I truly believe as a man, you want to make sure you're taking that position to make her feel that those things are still happening in the place. I speak to a lot of men who deal with a lot of erectile dysfunction. There are men who are, in spaces where because of a sudden illness, diabetes, stroke, you name it, sometimes some stress at work can happen and they're not functioning. And it's good to know, one of the fears of many men is to know that what else? I mean, they put so much emphasis in that. And I tell them, yes, do what you need to do as men to stay as healthy as you can. And this is why I created the site, MrRelationshipManCave.com, so that you can go there. So if it's something that you need to see a therapist about, if there's some sort of vitamins that you need, if there's some sort of something that you need, I have resources there to address that. But until that time, know that you're still doing what you need to do to communicate with your partner, that she still desired, that it's not her, because a lot of women take that on themselves. And
mhm,
that's fair. So you need to make sure that, sweetheart, it's not you. It's just maybe, it's just something that I'm going through. But make no mistake about it. You're still the biggest thing in my life. I still desire you. I still want you. I still think about you in that space. So that's very, very important that even in the absence of sex, you're showing that what happens when sex is not enough, because there's so many other components to that relationship. You want to make sure you're hitting on all cylinders to
mhm.
make her feel appreciated and that the vision that you both had planned for a relationship is still full speed ahead.
Absolutely. And to rewind it back in the previous part of the conversation, we were talking about, I think I kind of started off of talking about like the time frame, for the side. And I think that there are certain, I would say for some people, I would say for most people, most women, there are a certain mark on the wall where they say, well, I'm gonna do my best to hold out this long, right? Versus this long, whether it's 30 days, 90 days, 180 days, whatever, right? Or forever. Again, this isn't directed towards nobody particularly. And so, whatever your belief is, whatever. So that, I wanted to address that to the women more or less who struggle with that, right? Because I think that a lot of times for us women, we do get caught up in the, like I said earlier, what's that happy medium? Because you have some that will, set a different milestone for us. And so now we have the little bit more conservative people like myself who I want to, appear to be a little bit ladylike, right? Notice I said appear. So, it can't be one of those, we go out 2 days and I'm ready to give it to you, I mean, granted, like I've always said, we know from the beginning if we're going to give it to you. It's just a matter of how long now, right? How long I'm going to make you wait, right? You just better not do anything to screw it up before then. But that's the thing. How long I'm going to make you wait? So there's that challenge there because, again, you don't want to say, okay, well, I'm going to set, a limit and say, 3 dates, and then he in there. Okay. Well, okay, let's explore that for a minute. 3 dates, maybe spread it over, a 3-month period of time. Everybody got jobs, and especially when we were all in the pandemic, you know what I mean? So when you start doing it that way, regardless, what does that look like to you? If you're setting the rules for yourself, you have to decide what does that 3 days look like for you. So in other words, let's just say that a guy is pursuing me. I'm gonna use myself as an example in all this. A guy is pursuing me and I say, okay, I'm going to set it for 3 dates. So after 3 dates, if everything seems to be going good conversation wise, I've gotten to know him. We've done this, we've done that, then after 3 dates, I'm gonna give him some. I'm gonna give him everything I got, I'm gonna give it to him, right? Well, what does that look like for me? And so for me, that will look like 3 dates with some substance to it. You understand what I'm saying? And what I mean by 3 dates with some substance to it, us meeting on a corner for coffee in the middle of a day, or you're passing through the way and you say, hey, reach out to me and I'm gonna meet you up here. To me, it's a sporadic date. I get it. So it's technically a date, but I don't count that one as one on the getting to know a person's basis, right? For me, I don't count that as part of the 3. Now, could it be a date? Yeah, but it's not part of my 3 substantial dates. You see what I'm saying? The date that has some relevance to them, right? To me, that's just I met you for coffee. As simple as that. We just met for coffee, okay? Whereas that someone else might say that that's a date. So for them, they may be down one, only got 2 more to go. So when you set this parameter about what those dates look like versus dates versus time or whatever, then you have, I think a person has to decide that for themselves. Some people might say, well, I don't care how long we go out. I'm not giving him none until I meet his mama, right? It may be a year before you meet his mother. Understand what that looks like to you in that time frame. Have y'all just been playing phone tag over that time frame? And then he, because it's the barbecue for the 4th of July, he say, you know what, you want to go with me because now he needs a date and he pick you. Is that the time when you really ain't spent no time with this joker prior to that? So you have to establish what it looks like to you. What does that time, regardless of time, what does that date, regardless of the amount of dates, look like to you? You know what I mean? So, I mean, where I'm at right now in my life, I don't know. I don't know, because for me, I have to move it forward on the list because, I'm a woman of a certain age and I have a certain things that I've done in life. And so there's only so many things that I actually desire, like forefront in when I'm dating someone. And for me, sex is one of my top 3, maybe top 4, but it's up there, right? And so I have to know, in those top 3 dates, and I'm going to speed those dates along. I'm like, okay, Joe, when we going out again? Because I need to speed this along, So because again, now if you had asked me 20 years ago, it may have looked different, and if you ask me tomorrow, it may look different than it does today. It just depends on where I'm at in my life at that time, or what I want to do, because it changes. Everybody changes. What you want, the things that I tolerate with in my 20s, I'm not going to tolerate with in my 40s. So it definitely changes. So what do you say about the time limit, Ronnie?
Well, I believe again, everyone likes to believe that a man believes that as long as he's paying for dinner the first time, he's ready. And let me tell you, when you want it versus when you feel you're ready are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
But in the subject of when sex is not enough, let me just put this out. This really just came to me. So, ladies, gentlemen, let me give you a little bit of thought, something to think about, a little homework assignment. And what I'd love for you to do is to reach out to Yasheka and I on RonnieandYasheka at gmail.com. That's RonnieandYasheka at gmail.com. And write down, I want you to really think about this. In the absence of sex, what has to happen in order for you to feel loved and appreciated in the relationship? Again, in the absence of sex. So let's just say up until last night, you both were having incredible sex. The love making was just off the charts. But something happened, and this is not a possibility for the next, whatever the length of time it may be. What has to happen in order for you to feel love and appreciated, desire in this relationship? So when we're talking about it's not enough, so we know the sex is no longer on the table. What else has to happen? And this will give you a little reflection into yourself and ways that now you can take this and communicate that. Because as Yasheka was saying, she has a time frame. She has a time frame. And this is in the space of the beginning. Well, then, let's just say you're not talking about it until after you walk down the aisles. Okay, great, beautiful, for whatever the reasons are. Then until that time, what has to happen? Not just verbally, but also through actions that make you feel that if you're dating, that the relationship, this dating space is going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a relationship that still continues to take the relationship to new levels. And if you're married, maybe re-engaging.
Mm-hmm.
But in the terms of dating, for those of you who intend to indulge prior to walking down the aisle, then what is your length of time if you want to equate it to chronological time? But what has to happen for you to feel safe that this man or woman, that is a space now that you are going to explore with this person? What has to happen?
Mm-hmm.
Some of you have a time. And as Yasheka communicated, it's not more so the time, but what happens at that time. So she can say 3 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
but based on how she
Yes.
categorized the dates,
And the
see, a man could sit here and hear 3
Yeah,
weeks,
that's
and
right.
he's like, oh, well, hell, let me just throw up some random stuff here. And I can say, well, Yasheka, hey, look, we done had 15 cups of coffee,
Mhm.
5 things of nachos. We've done Taco Tuesday 3 weeks in a row. Give it up. And you're like, she's like, no. No, maybe I didn't make myself clear.
Yeah.
So whatever that is for you, and you can make the decision whether this is a space that you want to cover immediately, or is this just something that you have in your mind. But again, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. And I'm sure Yasheka would love to hear that, so that we can both individually and collectively respond to that. What has to happen for you in the course of a month, 2 months, 3 months?
Well, we have someone that's tuned in with us right now, and she
Okay.
stated that that for her, it's more about, it's not about the number of dates. It's about if we go on those amount of dates, what have I learned about that person in that time
Right.
frame?
Right.
And because that person, like for example, she said, for example, if they say they work at this place, I need to make sure that they work there before she go there. You know what I mean? Before she
Right. Right.
intimate with that person and make sure they're not a creature.
Right.
And then she said it was a very healthy question because you won't always be able to express intimacy sexually.
Right.
And so I think she was referring to something that you said. So absolutely
Right.
correct. So I totally agree with her on that. For me, again, my dating process, because I've been doing this for a while, so I know, which may be a bad thing. Who knows? But my conversation usually will be around things that are important to me, right? Because I want to see what they want in life, right? I'm listening, I'm taking it all in. But because, for example, I won't necessarily ask a guy, well, where do you want to, where do you want to be when you grow older? Or where do you want to go to college? Like those things, I'm not talking about them anymore. So there are certain conversations that I need to know that I'm going to already ask. So my first question is, outside of everything else, is, okay, so where do you work at? And if they tell me they work at this place or they do this particular thing for a living, I'm already calculating the money. So I don't have to ask them, well, where are you going to be in 3 years? Because most people my age, if I ask them where they're going to be in 5 to 10 years, most of them are going to say, I hope to be retired. That's what most of them are going to say. I hope to be retired, So the questions are going to look a little different. And so right away, when they say, like I'm retired, but of course I'm not, I didn't retire the way normal people retire. So I'm retired. But people my age or guys my age, if they tell me that they hope to be retired in 10 years or less than 10 years, then I've already started to process in my mind, well, that sounds like he probably already has adult children, right? Of course, we're going to talk about it anyway. But to me, that means that he's not necessarily providing a lot of expenses for those kids anymore, right? Because they're on their own. It also tells me that he may have done the things that he needs to do to prepare himself for that 10-year retirement, or have started to put it in process to make sure that they're good, right? 401k, investments, stock, whatever that looks like. So there's a lot of things where once I ask one question, I've processed so many things. Now, as time go by, I'm sure we'll get a little bit more detail, like exactly what does your retirement looks like. Because, if you're retiring on this amount of money per month, that may work for you, right? I need to know that. So those are my more detailed questions. But for the most part, when we're at that level, there are a lot of things that even one question that I've mastered, right, to ask somebody, and I can start putting the pieces together. You understand what I'm saying? Like one of the questions I'll ask the guy is, if I'm talking about, I don't know, have they already lived in a particular town their whole life? They'll say, well, no, I was raised in this state, but I came to this state and then I moved to this state. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, how often do you get back to their state? They'll say some of the things like, well, I go back there to check on my property. Right. So right there, I already know that they've made some investments, right? They start to prepare themselves. They're saying the things that I want a gentleman in his 40s and 50s to talk about. The fact that he does have, one house or whatever. That means that he's established himself a little bit. He got a little credit going, because I want him to be equally to me, right? So there are just certain things that I can kind of maneuver in a conversation or ask in a conversation where I will get a lot of what I need, even before we get to any other dates, because depending on how it goes, we may not even make it to the second or third date. You know what I mean? It's just that simple. If he's telling me something like, well, right now I'm still trying to figure out, if I'm gonna move or about this house over here, you know what? So if you're still trying to figure it out, not that you're in the process of buying your retirement home or your first home or whatever the case may be, if you're still trying to figure out if this is what you want to do or not, whether stay in this state or stay in that state, then I already know that we're not going to be on the second date, right? So talking about the sex won't even matter. We won't even get that far. So yeah.
Exactly.
That comes with going on enough dates and just time, and then being married a couple times and comparing notes and stuff. Of course, all that. It's a whole calculation that goes on in my head.
Well, see, this is where, I'm sure there's some gentlemen tuning in and they're like, well, Ronnie, what the hell does any of this have to do with sex or lack thereof? And my answer to that is everything.
Hmm.
Gentlemen, I get it. There are some men who just figure they have the master key down. They think they know more than me, and whatever that is, that's fine. And yet they strike out after strikeout after strikeout, and still thinking for some reason it's the women. And I'm saying, no, it's you. If men learn to accept that the thought process women have while dating, and I did a podcast recently talking about what men think of, but here we're talking about what women think of to even get to the point. And this is what we're talking about when sex is not enough, because right now, before even we get to that part, what happens in between all of that?
Hmm.
What's important to her?
Hmm.
And while we're also, as men, focus on making sure that we're getting our needs addressed, and is she qualified to fulfill those needs? Again, make no mistake about it. If we're trying to get to this space where we want to get to the lovemaking, well, you damn sure better be real clear
Hmm.
about learning what it is for her. You
Yep.
know, there are those women who says all my husband has to do is mow the lawn, do the dishes, cook dinner, and I'm in the mood.
Hmm.
Logically, it makes no sense. But again, brothers, why question it? Do the damn dishes. Watch, or hell, get someone to do it. Pay someone to do it. So there's just so many things that go along with making sure, gentlemen, that you're putting yourself in a position so that you can get to the lovemaking, because she's thinking about that. So what Yasheka clearly defined was the provider role. She's looking at it. You may look at it as just the money, money, money. Yeah, you want to look at one of the top reasons for divorce and talking about the lack of money. Again, we've covered this. We
Hmm.
talk about making sure that as a man we're providing,
Hmm.
and part of that provision in terms emotionally, intimately, mentally, we want to make sure we don't forget the financial part. Okay, because if you think sex is great and during the day, I mean, have sex when you know all the bills are paid and money is not an issue.
I know that's
That's some phenomenal sex. And if you
right.
really want to unleash the woman that you know she is deep down, make sure that money is right.
Yeah.
And I've heard this time after time after time again,
Hmm.
because that is a big problem in the dating space, the
Hmm.
relationship space, and in the marriage space. Make sure that money is in order, because that is a big obstacle outside of, regardless of how well you put it down in the bedroom.
Yep.
Mess that part up, and I can assure you, you're not going to get all of who she is as a woman.
Hmm.
So please make sure, gentlemen, that you not understand, but accept, to make sure that financial part is a space that she doesn't have to think about while you're doing whatever you're doing and thinking that you're rocking the world, when her mind is, oh my God, how are we going to pay this mortgage this month? What are we doing? Okay, we got the kids who need new, they need some clothes for school, or no, that should not be a thought in her mind.
Yeah.
So again, when sex is not enough, this is one of those instances. We
Yeah.
want to make sure that we're taking care of the space outside of the bedroom.
Well, I think that is I think we've said a mouthful, because I mean, at the end of the day, like I always say, I just want everybody to just be together. Like, just everybody come together, get to the love, to get to the love making.
Right.
But when it comes to dating, in terms of dating, there are so many factors. I was talking to someone on the phone and they were telling me about this very topic, and they made the comment about social media and dating sites being at your fingertips, and porn sites and things like that being at your fingertips, right? And so because of it, there do seem to be a lot of stress that comes from a person, when it comes to this part of it, right? And this isn't just from the woman's perspective of sex, it comes from the man's perspective of sex too, because just like men can watch porn, or see things on social media sites, women can too. You know what I mean? And so regardless of what a man may say, well, he don't care about that, it is still a factor. It can still cause stress. So when you got all these different things coming from you from all sorts of what's going on in the world with everything, sex becomes a big deal in a lot of relationships. Whether it's the person saying, well, I've decided that this isn't something I wanted anymore, or they get into a new relationship. I've even seen it where someone had a kid already, a single mom had a kid and was in a relationship with a guy, and that became a thing because she wanted to save herself for when she got married. And that was an issue because it's like, okay, well, how can you save yourself now when you had this child out of wedlock? And so then he became her judge and her jury, more or less. You know what I mean? And so different things. So a person like that who are trying to stand because maybe they feel like they made a mistake the first time because they did put sex before everything else, and then it ended them with being single with a child. So maybe their priorities has changed, whereas that other person doesn't see it that way. And so that's why you really need to have these conversations and ask yourself, when it comes down to it, do we have something more sustainable? Because depending on where this is with your relationship, it can harm you or it can make you in a relationship. You know, you hear it all the time, people in relationships saying, hey, when we first got together, the sex was this, the sex was that. You know what I mean? Or I even know a situation where somebody broke up with the other person because they wouldn't have sex, or the woman thought that the man wasn't being too aggressive. Like, well, why we ain't have sex no more? So she kind of like called it off with him because she felt that for her, she felt like he wasn't attracted to her because he wasn't making the move on her right. You know what I mean? And so it wasn't that he didn't want to, he was just being respectful. But yes,
Mhm.
she had this other guy in her ear saying all these things. I don't know why he don't want you. He must don't want you. I want you. And so she went back with her ex. So it comes from different directions, you know what I mean? And so you got to really understand, okay, where are we outside of this? And then on top of this, if I do this, what does the next level look like? Or what are my expectations? Are there any expectations? Because no one said you had to have any, but what are my expectations? Can you compartmentalize one from the other? Can you lay down with someone that maybe you're working towards something and you're not there yet, and you're okay with not it being okay? I had sex with them, so we're together. Are you okay if that's not the case? Like, you got to ask yourself all these things, and all this is something that you have to know for yourself. So you have to, that part of you knowing who you are while you're out here in this dating world. Like we always talk about, Ronnie, people knowing who they are when they're dating, knowing what they want. That way they can know what they're asking for and what they desire from a partner. Because if you're not having a conversation about it, your feelings will be all over the place. You will be
Mhm.
all over the place, putting a label to something that shouldn't have a label. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, I can assure you that this is going to be a constant theme throughout the many forthcoming discussions Yashika and I have. Is who are you? Who are you? What are you telling yourself as you walk out the door each day? Or you're telling yourself something positive as you walk out the door each day. Because again, that person that you think didn't exist may just be at that bus stop, maybe at that gas station, maybe at that library, maybe at the local coffee shop that you have. But if you're not ready, the for yourself and knowing what you're looking for and having the questions you have, we can just take sex off the table. I don't care whether it's before marriage or after marriage or whatever, knowing who you are. And this way, I can assure you, moving forward in the relationship and dating and marriage space, if you have to relearn yourself, if you're already married, this plays a part. Just re-engage yourself because you're still throughout the dating relationship, and if that relationship is marriage, you're still an individual and you still have to show up every day, not just for the other person, but for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's the best way to bring this to an end, Ronnie. So this is this is one of those subjects I think that we'll probably come back around to. Like,
Absolutely.
always so
Absolutely.
much more to
Absolutely.
talk about when it comes to sex, and especially the part of is it enough in a relationship, and deciphering everything that it means, definitely deciphering what it means. But this has been awesome. But I just wanted to let everybody know, for those of who are tuning in now or tuning in later, um, this is Ronnie and Yasheka, and you can check us out and send us an email if you have any questions or any inquiries, or even if you have a subject that you would like for us to discuss. We will definitely do it, and you will remain anonymous. We won't put your name out there or anything like that. It'll just be a discussion that we
That's
have.
right. That's right.
You can email us at RonnieandYasheka@gmail.com, and I will be sure to edit the video to make sure that we have it in there. And if you are here for the first time or checking us out, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Ronnie and Yashika's Dating Discussion. And yeah, and make sure to click your notifications so that you'll know when we go live. So you can come on in, and we will allow people to come in and converse with us as time progresses on, as this is our first time live on YouTube. And so also you can check me out at The Art of Dating as well, where I talk, candidly, just about different things that women go through in the dating world. And then Ronnie, tell them the name of your podcast on YouTube.
You can go to MrRelationshipMan.com. That's MrRelationshipMan.com. I cover a number of subjects in terms of the space of just us as men and women, dating, sex. Also, for those of you who are interested in consultation and coaching, you can reach me at resultswithronnie.com. That's resultswithronnie.com. And for the men and the couples, when we're talking about the sex, you can go to MrRelationshipManCave.com. MrRelationshipManCave.com. A lot of resources for the men, so that we can get to the love and then get to the love making, as Yasheka always so eloquently shares. And I also want to take a moment to thank Cece for her input and her thoughts and sharing with us. We do encourage that. And also, too, don't forget to share the broadcast for those that you feel it can benefit.
Okay, and I will update the information. And so there's a website that I'll drop in the description where you'll be able to click it, and then from there you can book with Ronnie or set up a consultation with Ronnie. And then also on the right you can book and set up a consultation with me, or email us both, or individually, depending on what you want to do. So Ronnie, this has been a great night, and I cannot wait until we do it again. I thank you so
Absolutely.
much for being here today.
Thank you, Yasheka. I appreciate you. And again, the input and all that you share and what you do for couples all over the globe.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and to everyone, and I'll see you guys on the next live. Bye.
Have a good evening, everyone.